Hi, this is Bruce Rawles, and I'm speaking with Stefan Bolz another time, and looking forward to this conversation. Stefan is an avid fellow course student, and he has a wonderful YouTube channel with lots of great stuff. Highly recommend it. I'll put the link in the post that I make of this video. And anyway, uh, welcome, Stefan. It's good to talk with you again. And happy
Yeah.
April Fool's Eve.
April Fool's Eve. Yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
So I'm looking through your quotes, and let me see. Do you have the one with the pitchfork in there?
No, but that's a good one. I'll look that up real quick. That's an excellent one. How did I miss that one? Yeah, that's a great one.
It's always you can talk to people about the course, and you can always say, "Hey, the course is about pitchforks."
Yeah, right,
Basically,
exactly. I fortunately only it appears once. I looked it up in the
it once. Yep,
online
yep.
version of the course. Kudos again to Felix Alcala and all the folks at FIP for putting this together a few years ago now. What an incredible resource. Um, yeah, this is in the section 8 of the manual in paragraph 5. Um, I'll just go ahead and read that one because it's probably a fun one to start off with this. There's some good lampooning already right in that paragraph. It says there can be no order of difficulty in healing merely because all sickness is illusion. Is it harder to dispel the belief of the insane in a larger hallucination as opposed to a smaller one? Will he agree more quickly to the unreality of a louder voice he hears than to that of a softer one? Will he dismiss more easily a whispered demand to kill than a shout? And do the number of pitchforks the devils he sees carrying affect their credibility in his perception? I'll finish the paragraph. His mind has categorized them all as real, and so they are all real to him. When he realizes they are all illusions, they will disappear. And so it is with healing. The properties of illusions which seem to make them different are really irrelevant, for their properties are as illusory as they are. And I just thinking about this, it makes me realize that the very first miracle principle, there's no order of difficulty among them, is demonstrated in this paragraph. And and as we were talking just for a moment before we started the recording, um, it's always important to preface this with when we're in ego mode, which is admittedly fairly frequently for all of us who are still using a mixed thought system approach to peace and with split minds. When we're in ego mode, these don't seem like you know gentle lampooning statements. They seem like fighting words, right? Them's fighting words, says every ego when the truth is dished out plainly and clearly, right?
Yeah. For me, this is it's funny because we're on hunting and kind of a little foolery because of April Fools. I'm in real estate, so the properties of illusions, for their properties are as illusory as they are. And real estate, it's real and the
Right.
properties of illusions. So there's a lot
Sure.
in there that can potentially be a little hysterical, you
Yeah.
know.
It
It's
probably
just so
wouldn't
funny.
look good on your business card to put surreal
Like
estate, right?
unreal estate,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, or surreal estate.
Yeah.
Well, we have a bunch of things like commission accomplished,
Oh, that's
commission
good. Well,
impossible.
that's good. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But the unreal estate is definitely a thing.
Well, I,
Um,
I was joking with a friend earlier today that I've helped support your industry for many years, having moved about every 3 years in the last few decades. So, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, that's the old slogan: a thousand homes he makes, and yet none contents his restless
Right.
mind. Uh,
Right.
but there's nothing wrong with moving physically or geographically. I think the whole point is that, as Ken Wapnick points out, that it's every relationship that we make that, it's like, well, this isn't working. I'll try another job or another partner or another
Right.
diet or another endless categories, let alone subcategories, right? And
Yeah.
we don't see the humor in that usually when we think, oh, well, I'll just try this next approach because it's got to be better, even though the content's the same, even if the form's different, right?
Yeah, I think because the purpose is the same.
Right,
That's why
right.
we don't care so much how many things we try out. The moment, as long as the purpose is there,
Hmm.
why is it that we're going to the next and to the next and to the next? As long as that's not solved, then it's an endless, seek and do not find kind of
Yeah.
situation.
And that's pretty humorous in itself, is that, we're so stubbornly insistent on doing everything we can to make it look like we're diligently trying to find peace, and yet either consciously or unconsciously sabotaging it almost at every turn, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's so interesting because even though we start with the course with the very best of intentions, we
Hmm.
all have like, oh my God, this is an amazing book, the language and it's so beautiful and,
Hmm.
and all that. The baseline is that we don't want to learn it.
Right.
That's the oxymoron. That's kind of and if we don't realize that we don't, that the biggest part of us doesn't want to learn the course,
Hmm.
we're just flopping around, in the flopping
Hmm.
around. Like when Ken once said, that's the way the mob flops. The mob flops like this. So we
Uh-huh.
we we don't get anywhere,
Yeah.
until we realize that even though the course we're studying it, and then we're very serious about it. A big part of us says, I'm just not going to learn it.
Hmm.
That's the kind of the oxymoron that we have with learning it or studying it.
So true. And we keep reinvesting in fantasies and substitutes and illusions that we know intuitively are not, the sustainable piece, which is the unchanging piece. But it's sort of like the carrot on the stick. We keep thinking, well, that I haven't tried this permutation or this variation. Maybe this will work. And yet we know that it's going to fail us. And then when we're
Right,
blindsided, we
right,
we have, oh, I've got an excuse now. I didn't see it coming. Well,
right,
maybe consciously not, but unconsciously we kind of know what we're doing, huh?
right.
Yeah.
I don't get this sentence really, when he says with the pitchforks. I know the pitchforks are funny, but the amount of pitchforks, let me see. Oh, properties, I mean properties, sorry. Pitchforks.
Do the number of pitchforks the devils he sees carrying affect their
Affect their
credibility in his
credibility. Oh, it's
perception?
like a 1 or 1,000.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this devil's
Yeah,
got five pitchforks and the other one's only got three. So I'll feel more uh, respectful of the one with five or something. I don't know,
right,
something like that, I
right.
guess.
I had this image. There was a while back when I was in therapy. I think it was like mid 2000s, and I did those visual journeys. And one of them was I saw this big door in a landscape, and um, there's much more to it. But in general, on the other side of the door was the light, right? And the door had ever so slightly pushing towards, like it would open like this, right? So it would ever so slightly push toward me, but I put just my finger on it and the whole thing would stop. It was like 30 stories high. It was a massive wooden door
Hmm.
and it swung open, just a little pressure and my finger left it closed. So it would open if I would take my finger away. it would open and the light would stream through it,
Yeah.
right? But the just the tiniest wish
Hmm.
not to open it or
Yeah.
not to have peace will leave it not accessible. It's not. That's why there's no uh what's the first miracle principle?
No order difficulty among
There's
them.
no order in difficulties,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? There's no
Yeah.
order in my resistance against the door,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It can be 1,000 pounds that I push against it, or it can be my little finger,
Yeah.
right? As long as there's one person I haven't forgiven, then the door stays shut, right?
That's it. That's it. Yeah. Leave one person out or one thing out. Any exclusion will do the job. Yeah, that's the little willingness, and isn't it? Isn't it? Just to notice it just takes one exception of who we would include in peace, that then we leave ourselves outside the gate or outside the door.
Right.
As you're saying that that analogy, a visual, my dad worked at a nuclear facility in California, and they had a giant lead door because of the radioactive projects that they did. But apparently, he said it was so perfectly balanced and hinged that just a small little, like a 1 watt motor could move this door.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. And it also occurs to me a couple of metaphors that I think, that it's our part is so little, which
Hmm.
leads me to another one of those humorous quotes in the course about how our part is so disproportionately small. And I was thinking, sometimes you see these earth movers, and we have several open pit mines in Arizona where we live that are nearby, and these gigantic, spiraling roads down to
Right.
the halfway to the center of the earth, it seems, but well, not quite, but in the and moving all that stuff around, they have these gigantic, caterpillars and earth movers and trucks and whatnot, and the hydraulics in those things, there's just one person sitting in an air
Right.
conditioned cab that's moving a little lever that's maybe 5 to 10 inches long,
Yeah, yeah,
and they push on it maybe a pound or two of pressure, and they might be moving several tons at a
right,
time. So it's kind
right,
of like there's the disproportionate thing that Jesus is talking about in the course. It's like I just have to have the little willingness, and then that changes the willingness to go over to the from the ego's thought system to the Holy Spirit's is all it takes, and then that changes everything.
right.
Similarly with like a transistor, just a small amount of current going through
That's right.
two parts of a transistor, and then the second and third part then have a huge amount of change in the
To the
current.
switch of the to the big one. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
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 I think because everything is illusory, that's why the little willingness is enough. If the
Yeah.
ego would be real, then you would need one of those earth movers.
Right. Right.
You would have to work really,
Yeah.
really hard. If it
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
real, if sin would be real, it would be a massive undertaking. You need 10 of those earth movers, and you would just have a tiny little bit scraped off, and it would just be right impossible. But I think because the ego is unreal, it's only the belief, and the belief, the little willingness, that's what kind of penetrates that belief,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh,
because
that's
of the
that's
unreality of it.
that's really helpful, isn't it? Yeah, because it's from the Holy Spirit's perspective, nothing has to change. It's just a tiny little
Right,
adjustment in perspective. Yeah.
right. I had this image. One of the graphs on my channel that I use is, so there's this net, and in this net is all the ego emotions and thoughts, guilt and triumph and fear, and everything is in there. And there's a huge crane, and on the crane is one hook. One single hook has the whole net, and
Okay.
that hook is the belief in sin.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Once you cut that, then the whole thing,
Dominoes. Yeah.
yeah, comes down. There's nothing left. So that I don't know if you ever watched or if you ever read Ender's Game. by
I
Orson
know
Scott
of it.
Card.
I know of it, but I haven't read it
It's
yet.
it's one of the best sci-fi books you
Yeah.
can possibly read. It's
Okay.
really amazing. And so I don't know why this came up, but they did this. I don't want to give it away in case you want to read it, but they had
Okay.
this precision tool that would do some one thing, and then the whole thing would, collapse. There was just this one weak link, and if you'd hit that, then the whole thing would collapse. And that's the same. Um, I think with the ego thought system, that it's a little bit, the process, I think, is that going towards that. We start wide, and then we go narrower, narrower, narrower to this guilt, and then this belief in sin, and then that's kind of the drill, with the dentist drill, it goes right there. The
Remove
same sound.
the cavity of the belief in separation, huh?
The cavity of separation. Oh my God, that's right.
The seemingly cavernous cavity of
Yeah.
separation. Yeah.
Actually, cleavage is another word in the course. There's
Yeah.
once, I think, cleavage is in
I
the
think it
course.
appears once. Yeah.
The cleavage of yourself. I think it's in the obstacles to peace or something, in the final, the fear of God or something.
It is. Yes. Fourth obstacle. There it is. It's I'll put it in the chat here. It is. Let's read the last part of the paragraph. Here is your promise never to allow union to call you out of separation, the great amnesia in which the memory of God seems quite forgotten, the cleavage of yourself from you, the fear of God, the final step in your dissociation. So yeah, we think we took an axe and split perfect oneness, and now it's well, what kind of like I like the
Right.
Humpty Dumpty metaphor too. It's like, okay, now how do I put this back together? And that's the sin. Whereas the correctable error is just like, well, it's a movie. I can thread the projector backwards and just or turn the
Right.
motor backwards and then all the little pieces reassemble and
Right.
land on the wall.
Right.
I remember in fourth grade we had a substitute teacher, and we had a video a film strip of the Spanish missions because I grew up in California, and it showed the father of the mission and his compadre on the back of burros going through the vineyards. And the class was in hysterics when the teacher decided just because we were sort of an unruly bunch, and she ran the projector backwards. And so we saw the two gentlemen on horseback, or back of the burros, riding backwards through the vineyards, which was funny enough. But then these little stalks, empty stalks of grapes would leap up from the ground, and then they would take grapes out of their mouth and attach them to these clusters. And then
Oh,
they'd assemble a whole cluster of grapes, and then they'd take this cluster of grapes, and then they'd fly backwards off their horse and then into the vineyard, and then they'd reattach it to the vine, and then magically appear back on their steeds
right.
and proceed backwards further. But yeah, I think that doesn't it seem like the course is sort of an exercise, and it does say it's a complete reversal of thought. So in some sense, it's almost like we have to kind of mentally reverse our belief of the impossible crime that we committed. And
Right.
yeah,
Right. And the other thing would be, or that in this, with this would be to trace everything back to that.
yeah, yeah,
That would be the application. Like we're waiting for the bus and we get impatient, so we can trace that back to our belief in sin. Without the belief in sin, there wouldn't be the impatience. Or we're having trouble with a coworker, right? We trace it back to the belief in sin. So it's almost like this,
mhm.
um, taking it back and putting it in the rightful cause and effect relationship.
Yep, yep,
We're putting it back to the source, kind of connecting the dots back. Because I see it as like this. In a porcupine is not the right thing, but it's kind of this thing that kind of went like this, and everything flew in like 1,000 directions.
yeah.
And the core is the belief in sin. And now we just basically look at this and just take it out and put it back to trace it back, and then question that belief with Jesus. And it's anything,
Hmm.
stubbing our toe, you know, having a thought, any kind of thought, right? We're lying in bed, we have a thought, you know,
Yeah.
that's the belief in sin would be the origin of that.
Yep.
I think
That's,
there's this quote: "Every disordered thought is accompanied by guilt
I'll look it up.
in its inception and something else."
Okay. Actually, there's five different places where disordered thought appears.
Mm.
Oh, but I think the second one might be the one you were referring to.
Accompanied
Uh,
by guilt, right?
Actually, almost all those quotes are in, four of those five quotes are in section 5 of chapter 5 in the text, and three of them are in the same paragraph. So this got a gold mine here. Before I read that, I was just thinking, I was enjoying your metaphor of the, porcupine throwing its quills or something like that. And I was thinking, well, that's projection, isn't it? And so the first step in the and undoing the projection, as our beloved Ken Wapnick reminds us, is I just have to start with, typically lesson 5. I'm never upset for the reason I think. So that's sort of like reeling back in
Right,
projection, like pulling back the quills that I've, my blame thrower or
right,
whatever metaphor you like, of saying, okay, it's not my fault. It's everything else in the world that's the problem, including my own body, of course, which is outside our minds, as the course
right.
says. But yeah, but I have to reel it back in first, and then I need Holy Spirit's help to look at the imagined guilt inside as well as outside. Huh?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Should I read that paragraph?
Sure.
Okay. Um, let me see if I can I'll put the first part in the chat. I don't think it'll take all the whole paragraph, because it's like 12 sentences, but it's a good one. It's got the three instances of disordered thought. Irrational thought is disordered thought. God himself orders your thought because your thought was created by him. Guilt feelings are always a sign that you do not know this, a clue that we're being silly, huh? They also show that you believe you can think apart from God and want to. Now, that want to, that boy, that's when I think about Ken's chart. Yeah, I like how he says, well, that the world isn't the problem, because that's a projection, and the ego isn't actually the problem either, because that whole thought system is made up. But it's that blue dot, that the little thing that the Ender's Game drill reaches, right?
Right,
that, that undoes the whole thing. So every disordered thought, um, we want to believe in the ego. That's the problem. So every
right.
disordered thought is attended by guilt at its inception. There it is. Which, another great movie. I love movie Inception.
Inception. Right,
So many good metaphors in it. And maintained by guilt in its continuance. Guilt is
right,
inescapable by those who believe they order their own thoughts and must therefore obey their dictates. This makes them feel responsible for their errors without recognizing that by accepting this responsibility, they are reacting irresponsibly. And then it goes on, if the sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement for himself, and I assure you that it is, Jesus says, then the responsibility for what is atoned cannot be yours. The dilemma
right.
cannot be resolved except by accepting the solution of undoing. You would be responsible for the effects of all your wrong thinking if it could not be undone. Yeah, if it was sin and not error, a
Right,
correctable error. Yeah, the purpose of the atonement is to save the past in purified form only. If you accept the remedy for disordered thought, a remedy whose efficacy is beyond doubt, how can its symptoms remain? Well, obviously, I think the implication is we haven't quite yet accepted, or at least fully accepted, the remedy for
quite,
disordered thought.
quite.
Maybe we're working toward it, but there's still some reservations there, maybe. Do you think? Yeah. Jesus knows his students, as
Right,
Ken likes to
right.
say. Yeah. Yeah. Great paragraph.
Yeah, for me, this is the disordered thought because there's so many thoughts that run through our head when we're. For me, it's always when I lie in bed. It's like they're just like bouncing, right?
Uh-huh.
And even the wish to connect with Jesus or just be close to him or something like that is the swirling thoughts completely eliminate that, right?
Right.
But
It's sort
the
of like
thought that
when the
what?
sun, I was going to say, it's like when the sun rises, the stars are still there in the sky, but we don't see them because the ego becomes like our local sun that drowns out and blinds us to the light from the stars, which are
Right, right,
far more vast.
right.
Yeah.
And then all those thoughts, um, because we can't control them. The I think the notion to try to control the thoughts is an impossible task because the guilt is what generates them.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like it throws out this guilt. This guilt the guilt generates those thoughts. So the core of those thoughts is, or the undoing of the thoughts is to undo the guilt that is what this paragraph says, right? It's
Yeah.
attended by guilt at its inception and maintained by guilt. So
Yep.
without guilt, there wouldn't be those crazy thoughts that we had.
It's like the keystone that holds up the whole arch, or the
Right.
place where the drill and the Ender's Game goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That one
It's
little
really
pivotal
interesting.
thing that undoes the whole thing, that
Right.
topples the deck of cards or the dominoes or the card house. Yeah. 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 It's always back to that choice for the ego and that wanting to believe in separation, because the belief
Right.
itself is bogus, but it's our wanting to keep it based on the idea that we think we're getting something out of it.
Right. So here I have this theory that I started a while back. I'm not sure if it's 100% right. It feels right for me that so the decision so we have this tiny mad idea, then we say the ego is kind of brought into existence, right? And the seeming separation from God happened, and we decide for the ego for this one millisecond, right? And so if without this next point of the sin that we are sinful, that decision for the ego is like I envision it like a feather. It's so light, it has no substance at all,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that
Hmm.
wanting to be with the ego, it's like, all right, I want to be a pilot. Okay, no, I'm not going to be a pilot. So that's it. But when we wanted to be with the ego for this 1 second, and the ego said, and we started to believe that is a sin. That's almost, I have this image where you pour hot tar over this feather, and it's like it crashes to the ground, and there's no movement.
Hmm.
The feather cannot move. So that's wish to, this decision maker at that moment, this wish to be with the ego, this light wish that can easily flop back is now buried under this sin and guilt, and then the fear comes up. So
It gives a whole new
that
meaning to being tarred and feathered.
exactly, I know. I think that's where I got that from. But yeah, so the wish to be separate, I always felt is not. Yes, that's a wish, but it's a tiny mad idea. It's nothing. But then the
Mm-hmm.
sin comes in, and it just, oh, puts all this 1,000 pounds of weight on
Serious.
it.
Yes.
Seriousness,
The
right?
gravity of the situation.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And the
the
levity is lost in that moment, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
decision maker is also is
Right.
under that mound,
Right.
right? And
Right.
then we go into the world, we fragment that into billions of pieces, and we're in the world. And to now say, oh, I can just easily decide for the Holy Spirit is not, it doesn't work because we're
Right.
still in this, the tar. Once the tar is gone, yes, we can easily decide. Like
Mhm.
Jesus says, like you walk down a path in summer, right?
Right. Right.
But we have to go through that belief in sin. That's the like,
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah.
you
You know,
know,
there's so many good metaphors that in the course that contrast the Holy Spirit's perspective, which is, that, cloud can't even hold a feather or a button.
right,
And yet we think of it as this light years thick,
right,
steel reinforced granite,
exactly.
lead wall, whatever,
Yeah,
that's you know, uh, just unimaginably vast and insurmountable. But that's only because our minds are so powerful that we can, and covered
exactly. We
covered
can
now
make
with
this up.
hot molten tar that's now cooled. Yeah.
It's
To
all gooey, you're just
to
like,
to,
ooh,
to further compound the despair and
right,
the desperation and that whole attempt. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, the solution, chemically, a solution, right,
Yeah. Yeah.
would be to pour something over it
Right.
that dissolves that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? The solution is the solution, it
The
dissolves.
forgiveness in the new handy aerosol container.
Exactly. Yeah, you go to your people that you don't like, and you just go like this.
We're talking metaphorically now. You just
Yeah, of course.
kids don't try this at home with a real
No, don't.
aerosol. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And don't make it onto the single beam that goes straight into the nostril. Pepper spray.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that tar gets a whole new dimension to the stickiness and the gooiness of the ego's propaganda machine, doesn't it? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And for me, that is because so once we give the power to the ego, we have given it away. It's not that we can just get it by say, oh no, I want it back now. Even Jesus tells us many, many times that we can make a choice, but obviously we're not making it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Otherwise, we would be at peace like at this very moment, right? We're not
Hmm.
making that choice. And I think we're not making this choice because we're still in this goo,
Hmm.
right? The feather is not free.
Yeah.
The decision maker isn't free yet. It's
Right.
still in the
And a huge part of the tarry, sticky, dark goo seems to be I still need to fix things in the world in order to get back to
right,
that's the
exactly,
secret door,
right.
and yet Jesus says, now you're dreaming that too.
It's part of the tar,
Yeah.
right?
I'm looking at my little timer and it says we got 4 minutes left in this
Wow,
recording. I know time flies when we're having fun. It, so let's see. In any other uh, bits of
crazy
craziness, humor,
lines.
levity, reminders to not take our tiny mad idea too seriously that are your favorites? And we should do this again because it's a plenty
Yeah.
to work with again. Yeah.
So Ken, when I was at the foundation, we after that I would write faxes to Ken when faxes were still a thing,
Oh yeah.
with little questions and stuff to Ken, and he would answer me within a day or two. And one of them was, um, I had this thing with him that I was the frog because of the frog prince, whatever. So he wrote back and said, um, "Let the love flow, froggy. Everything else is simply silly." And that was 25 years ago, and I'm starting now to get it. I thought I could just say, "Oh yeah, sure, let the love flow," right?
Uh-huh.
But it wasn't clear to me how much I didn't want to let the love flow, right? I was like,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
let it stop, right?
Arm's
So
length at best, right? Yeah.
yeah, kind of like hold the door closed, right? So there
Hmm.
was, after so long, it's like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah, I think we seems like we could come at it from a long uh, sequence of trying to be our own teacher. One of the lines that I think is a great lampoon is it's actually in two places, as Ken points out. Resign now as your own teacher, and then the other part that's usually joined with that is remember nothing that you taught yourself or you're badly taught.
Right, right. Ouch.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. When we're on our own,
Yeah.
another metaphor that I've found really helpful lately is thinking of like we're amoebas crawling on the dark side of a leaf at the bottom of a really murky pond, and occasionally, once in a while, we crawl around the toward where we're getting starting to see a glimmer of the light from the upper side of the leaf, where the light's coming through, albeit
Hmm.
dimly, from way above, and we say, "Wow, I understand the cosmos now." I've seen the light and I
Right,
understand the universe. And well, maybe not. Maybe it's a little brighter within my dream, but I think I've still been pretty badly taught. So, but fortunately, we do have a teacher within us that guides us out of the murk and the
right,
tar and the goo and
right,
the seemingly insurmountable brick walls of the prison that we've locked ourselves into.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to find puns with tar. It's hard. Tarzan. I don't know.
Oh, alrighty. Well, we've got less than a minute. So anyway, I just want to
Okay.
thank you for having the
Yeah, that was
conversation.
fun.
And what we should do more of these. And
Absolutely.
I'll post this and send you a link. And appreciate
Great.
your time. And it's always fun to
You too,
converse.
Bruce.
Yeah.
I'll see you soon.
Thanks so much.
Yep. Thanks so much.
Bye for now.